We put this on for you, so that there's no violations. It gives you the tools that you need to do your job, and limit your liability, and limit your liability for life. So, first I'd like to open it up to Mr. Mayor, and he's gonna say a few words to get the meeting started.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Morning.
Okay, good. Thank you all for coming. We're very happy to see such a large crowd. I guess next year we're gonna have a larger room and more donuts, but we'll do our best. I believe this is the 6th year we're doing this. We are the first community in the state to do this. To bring all our licensees in and discuss the liquor license regulations with everybody. The whole purpose being to make sure everybody is up to date with all the regulations. Nobody makes any mistakes. We don't have any violations, and we have a very smooth operation throughout the year. We're very happy to have representatives from the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission with us today. Special thanks to our panelists who are from Commissioner Jean Lorizio, Chair of ABCC. Hi, good morning. Ralph Sacramone, Executive Director of the ABCC. Morning, Ralph. Attorney Kyle Gill, General Counsel for the ABCC. Hi, Kyle. Good morning. Ryan Melville, Deputy Executive Director of the ABCC.
He's home with COVID.
That's a good place for COVID. Tom Carroll, Community Outreach and Resource Planning Specialist at U.S. Department of Labor. Thanks for coming. And our city personnel, of course, are here. Lieutenant McCarthy, who you all know. Attorney Kate Fallon, Attorney Bridget Bradley, Jasmine, the assistant to Kate and Bridget, and firefighter Gringras, Deputy Chief, I'm sorry.
And Audra.
And where's Audra? Oh, and Audra, you all know Audra. She's the one that does all the work. She's the one that keeps everybody happy. So we appreciate everybody's efforts to have a smooth operating process here for all the licensees and help you whenever there's any questions. Ralph was telling me that you're only a phone call away from getting questions answered. If you have any questions or thoughts about what you should be doing or not doing, phone call away to keep everybody happy. We want everybody to be successful, and that's why your attendance here is so important, and we really appreciate the fact that you're here. So I'm going to leave it at that. Welcome you all again. Next year, we're going to try and do it a little more comfortable, and I wish you all a good conference today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so we have a slide presentation for you.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna introduce Deputy Chief Will Ginsburg. He's just gonna talk about some of the fire related codes and things like that, inspection requirements that they want to be aware of.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Will Ginsburg, fireman in the city of Framingham.
Get a shot.
Thank you for all coming. Like the mayor said, I believe this is our 6th year. This is my 5th year participating in this. It's very important. I see a lot of familiar faces out there, which is nice. For those of you, welcome. So I'm going to be brief like the mayor, because I know you guys have a lot of things to go over. The fire inspection. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 148, it's required if you have a liquor license, you have to have an inspection by the fire department, life safety inspection every year. Okay, there's a lot of different businesses in here, as far as liquor stores and restaurants and so forth. So your inspections are all going to look a little bit different. One thing I want to emphasize is the fire prevention division, all the guys that are up there and women, we all have over 20 years in the fire service. And the reason why I tell you this is they don't get stuck on the little things, right? We're not out there to try to, hurt your business or anything. We're just trying to make it safe and meet compliance. And like I said, compliance for all you got to look a little different for the different types of businesses you have. But But every year, the one thing that gets stuck is you're waiting too long to schedule these inspections. All right, last year we did over 3,000 inspections in my office. And you see just in this room, you guys are waiting till December to call us. It's very difficult for us to get out there. There's a lot of times we have to do re-inspections and things like that. And some of you in this room, know you've had re-inspections with us, right? Because you may have came short with compliance. So schedule those inspections early, reach out to us. All right, contact our office. We'll come out in September, October, November. You know, but don't wait till the end of December to contact us, right? So that way now you worry about your license being rejected going into New Year, holiday season and stuff like that. You guys have questions for me? My 5th year doing this, one thing we never asked, you guys have any questions for the fire department? What you may need to do or what we're looking for?
What is the earliest you can call to get inspection?
What type of business do you have?
The arcade restaurant.
Okay. Awesome, September?
Yeah, so
We'll come out. So Audra, the license commission, they'll start issue us, you know, inspection details of our businesses and stuff like that. But we'll get it done and we'll just let Audra know, hey, you're all set. Yeah. Like September's a great time, especially like liquor stores and some of these other places. The restaurants, those really fall under the building department office because you gotta pay the application fee and so forth like that. So those are scheduled through the building department. But if you have just a general business that sells alcohol, call us in September, we'll come out. We'll get it taken care of for you guys, right? That way you guys don't have to worry about it. You guys can have a nice happy fall. Any other questions? The other thing I want to emphasize too, like I said, we did over 3,000 inspections last year by the prevention divisions, but I only issued 3 citations. I just want to emphasize, we're not out here to try to get you like the aha moments, right? We're here to help you. A lot of this is education, right? So if you find something, right, unless it's like a really serious light hazard, we're here to educate and help you guys, right? And help you through this process. We're not out here to issue citations and tickets, before your license, we're here to help you. Okay? So just remember that when my guys come out, ask the questions if you don't know. They'll give you the answers. If they don't know, we'll find out for you. Okay? Anything else? All right, good luck to everybody. Thanks for seeing you guys. And thank you.
All right, so we're gonna open up the presentation. Many of us will be just kind of jumping in to add pieces of the puzzle to the presentation. Most of it will be done by the ABCC and the city solicitor. So we can get started.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Ralph Sacamone. I'm the Executive Director of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission. I've been attending and performing and engaging in the seminars with Framingham for the last 6 years. As the mayor had talked about, this was the forerunner to all of bringing training right to the stakeholders. All before, training used to stop at the city clerk's office or the administration end of it in the commissions, and we got working with in the past with the at that time Framingham was a town, so they were talking about converting it to all of these new regulations and everything. We said, hey, let's try to educate the licensee in its work. As we can see, compliance issues have been 100% better than they were in the past, so we're pretty excited about this and this being the 6th anniversary of it. Before I actually begin the presentation, I'd just like to introduce the chairman of the ABCC to have some local remarks, the chairman, Gene Larizio.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I really want to thank the city of Framingham, Mayor Sisitsky, Attorney Fallon and her team, Lieutenant McCarthy, and Captain Gingras for including us. It's our pleasure to be here with you today. This is our first outreach of 2025, and we're happy to be here. I don't want to take up too much time either, but I do just want to point out that I think you heard it from the mayor, you heard it from Captain Gingras, and Ralph mentioned it briefly, but the goal of this seminar is really compliance and to help you give you the information you need to stay in compliance and to run a successful business. That's what our hope is at the ABCC, and you heard it here from Framingham. That's their hope too. So we have a nice presentation put together. Ralph and Kyle have what we think is important information to help you succeed. And also we're available for questions as well. So please don't hesitate to ask along the way if you have any questions about what we're presenting today. So thank you again for being here. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about why we're here today. Go to the first slide. we can click to the license thing. Okay, so here's how this whole seminar came about. We have found that there was a lot of licensees committed violations that they did not know that they were committing issues. And so forth. And one of them, there's a bunch of fallacies that are out there. You can do this, you can do that. We're gonna clear up all of those today. But one of the first things I like to tell everybody, I steal a quote from our general counsel all the time, Kyle. The license is a privilege, it's not a guarantee. With that privilege, you have rules and guidelines you need to follow. And you have state guidelines, and then you have additional guidelines that's put forth by the city of Framingham. So today, what we're gonna do between myself, my general counsel, Kyle Gill, along with Lieutenant McCarthy and Attorney Fallon, we're gonna combine both the state regulations and conditions along with the local regulations. So to make you very, very successful in the long run. Then toward the latter part of the presentation today, you're gonna have a gentleman, Tom Carroll, who is from the United States Department of Labor. He oversees wage, hour, and child labor. He got some great information for you to work with, and that is also compliant, so you don't run into issues with the United States Department of Labor. So we're gonna cover a lot of that. We'll move it along. I know we started a little late, but we will continue. We'll move it along very quickly for you. We run a very informal presentation. And we like to have people ask questions on the topics we're talking about. You don't have to save your questions for the end. And if you think it's more related to your business, as Gene had said, Chairman Larizio, that we will meet with people after, so don't worry about those. But any questions you have related to subject matter, please don't hesitate to raise your hand and ask that question. Let's talk about changes to existing licensees. Everyone in this room at some point in time was approved by the local board with an application, either as a new license or a transfer, or coming in as a stockholder, or coming in as an investor into a corporation. Once all licenses go through a three-step process. First, you apply to Framingham. Framingham has a hearing, they approve you. Then they send the application to the ABC. What happens when it comes to the ABC? That is our licensing division. It's assigned probably within 24 hours to an investigator. That investigator handles the case. If it's a new license, they come out to do an on-site. They meet with all the individuals involved, make sure all the paperwork is in order, and so forth, along with financials. Also, we run queries on everybody because the commission is tasked with character and fitness. You have to have good character and fitness in order to be in possession of a license. So we go through all of that. At that point, the investigator makes a recommendation. It comes before my desk. And then at that point, we recommend it to the commission. There's a 3-panel commission. 2 of the 3 must agree either on an approval or a disapproval. So at that point, once they approve, which 90% of the licenses get approved, probably 95, as long as you follow exactly what you need to do. At that point, the commission approves it. There's an email sent back to the city of Framingham and the contact person on the application. At that point, the city of Framingham issues you an actual license. At that point, any changes you make to your license has to be approved in the 3-step process I talked about. Here's where people end up with violations. Even though you don't think you're doing anything wrong, for instance, if you look here, these are all the most popular, the most popular issues people have with ending up with a violation. We talk about the first one, change of ownership. Now, what I mean by change of ownership is very simple. You decide you're gonna sell your license. You have a buyer, the buyer comes in, you do all the paperwork. All right, that person goes forward with a transfer application. The local board approves it. Your responsibility as the seller does not stop there. You must run that facility all the way till the 3-step approval process is done. And the town of Framingham issues a new license, an actual hard copy license to the buyer. You are responsible all during the way. And don't let the buyer or anybody try to fool you and say, no, I'll take all responsibility. It's not, because the license is under the seller's name until the local board issues in writing the actual hard copy application. So if they come in and they get caught buying alcohol from where they're not supposed to, or Lieutenant McCarthy's team comes in there and they find that minors are in possession, the buyer's not going to get charged. It's going to be the seller. So that's a violation right there. We don't want you to do that. So if anybody here is selling their license, all right, you must maintain control until the 3rd step is fulfilled on the 3-step approval process. The same thing goes with transfer of stock. All right, if you're transferring the stock or bringing in new stockholders, that's great. If you're bringing in new stockholders, you're going to expand your business. We're all in favor of that. You want to transfer stock and give stock to another individual, say for instance, a lot of places are 100% owned by one person, then all of a sudden the chef has done a great job, they want to give them 10% of the company as an incentive. That's okay to do. But that person that you're giving the stock to cannot assume any authority in the license until it goes through the 3-step approval process. All right? And then if you continue down, the same thing with officers and directors, trustees, anybody here that has a social club. All right, if I know you change your officers every year or every 2 years, those new officers cannot assume authority to make any decisions until you go through the 3-step approval process. Continuing down the line, you see renovations and alterations. As you know, on a licensed premise, anytime you do an alteration or anything that's a physical structure, we're not talking about paintings, painting the wall or anything like that, putting new rugs in, but if you're doing any physical construction, you have to get it approved. So you know what your duty is with the building department to go get your permit. But our jurisdiction runs on the license. So if anybody's doing alteration of premises and then say this room right now, we want to expand it and go into the room next door, you surely have the right to do that. All right, you get the right to occupy it by a lease or whatever, who the landlord is or if it's self-owned. All right, at that point, you need to apply to the local board for an alteration of premises. You get approved there, then it comes to the ABC. Until the local board issues you a new description on your actual license, you cannot use that facility. We have this happen all the time. People want to move outside, do outside seating. They get approved the local board, then they start serving alcohol outside. That's a violation. You do not want that to happen. So you gotta wait until you get the actual amended license with the new description. And you continue down, the most popular one we see is change of manager. All right, one thing I want to clarify a fallacy in this room, a manager does not control the outcome of a license. So if you hire somebody, I'm the 100% owner, I decide Lieutenant McCarthy as my manager. All right, Lieutenant McCarthy cannot assume that role and the authority of overseeing alcohol service, purchasing alcohol, etc., until you go through the 3-step approval process. We have this happen all the time. Now, if you have to let a manager go or a manager decides to quit, your restaurant does not shut down. Does everybody understand that? And that's what we get all the time. We have a manager walks out, they call us at the ABC, you gotta go shut them down. I'm not there as the manager anymore. They shouldn't be operating. That's not true. All right, what happens here, you have additional guidelines that you have for assistant managers here in Framingham, which Attorney Fallon can speak about, but on the overall gist, what will happen? You want to communicate immediately with the local board. So right now, Ralph Sacamone is no longer my manager. I am actively seeking to find another manager. You got to let him know right away. That's all about communication. Then at that point, while you're trying to find a new manager, if Lieutenant McCarthy is the owner, he can assume the responsibility because he's already been vetted. All right, until you find that manager, but you have to communicate with the local board. Now, I know if Attorney Fallon will talk about, you have assistant managers that are requirements on it. If you want to just jump a few minutes on that. Thank you.
And we have a rule and good morning, everybody. We have a rule and a requirement here that you also have to register your manager and your assistant manager with the police department. And at the time that you apply, as you know, you apply and you submit that manager's name and that manager goes through a vetting process. And you submit the assistant manager as well. And that assistant manager goes through the vetting and process part of the approval. So just like the manager situation, if the manager leaves and your assistant manager leaves, you have to come back to the board and identify the persons who are going to be their replacements. And that is a requirement under the law and under Framingham's rules. So there is also a requirement for you to alert the board at least 2 weeks in advance of that person taking over. That person that takes over has to go through that same approval process through the board. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
Just to add to that, so we used to require server ID cards for all bartenders, servers, anyone checking ID. That's gone. We've streamlined it, so we put that responsibility on the manager and assistant manager. We'll talk about the training later on in the presentation, but it's on you to make sure that people have one of the approved training classes, whether it's tips online, alcohol interventions, or one of the other classes. The management ID is for the manager and assistant manager. That basically proves that you have the training. If you come down to the station, pay $20, you get a photo ID. So before you leave today, make sure your ID is up to date. If not, call me. We'll get that squared away, but that's important that you have that. Yes, sir, in the back.
Question, so if the manager quits abruptly. The owner who's already been vetted is able to assume the responsibility while searching for a new manager, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I heard you say, right? So does the owner have to come in and get photo ID from the police department during that interim period?
I guess it depends on how long the interim period is. I mean,
Okay.
if they've already applied, the new person's gonna apply like the next week, I probably wouldn't make them come in. But I would ensure that they have the training.
If it's a month or more, what is it?
Yeah, I would ensure that they have the training at a minimum.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
I just add, the whole purpose of you having the assistant manager as well is in the absence of the manager, you're relying on that assistant manager to step up in that role, but ultimately, as Mr. Sacramone explained to you, the license holder is the one that's ultimately responsible for everything that's going on there. So if you have a team of managers that quits, you are gonna have to come back to the board. You're gonna have to go to your plan B or your plan C and come back to the board and let the board know what that is. And go back to the police department and let the police department know what that is. It's really on the license holder to make sure that those things are complied with ultimately.
Got it.
And the key is about communication. Communicating is what Lieutenant McCarthy and Attorney Fallon is saying. Let them know what's going on. If someone happens, my point was, a manager cannot hold the business hostage. Everybody understand that? But you have to do your due diligence and make sure you're communicating with the Framingham board and the police department. Any questions on that? And to wrap this up, two other things we see a lot up here is change of hours, change of location. Change of location, you decide to move. You cannot move the alcohol and the operation to the new location until the local board issues you the amended license with the new address. Everybody understand that? We have people moving alcohol in a week before that place is not licensed. All right, the police get a call saying there's alcohol at this premises and the premises is not licensed. They have the right to confiscate all the alcohol. All right, we don't want that to happen. You just wait, all right, until the three-step approval is done, and when you get the new applicant, when you get your new license with a new address on it, then you can officially move into it. It's almost the exact same rules as alteration of premises. Everybody understand that? All right, and then the last one is change of hours. When you come in at the beginning, when you get your license, you apply for, you're asking the local board. All right, I want to operate 7 days a week from noon time to midnight, or whatever your hours are. At that point, once they approve those hours, if you want to change any of those hours permanently, you have to get permission from the board. You can file what we call a change of hours application. And basically, it's no charge for that. That's one of the few ones that are free. Everything else, there's a $200 filing fee as it states in the statute. For a change of hours, and there's another one called change of DBA, you don't have to pay for. But with the change of hours, you just cannot take it upon yourself if you're 7 days a week, decide to close 2 days a week, Monday and Tuesday, I'm gonna close. That's a violation because under common good and public standing, the local board issued you a license. Public need, common good. And if you're not operating 7 days a week, then there's an issue there. All right, but you can ask for permission to the local board. Say, for instance, Monday's very slow. You want to give people a day off, your employees or your team. You could come in and change and say, oh, we're not going to open on Mondays no more. Let the local board do, they'll amend your hours. All right, and if you're supposed to stay open to midnight every night, and I'm not talking about weather conditions, if it's a bad snowstorm, you decide to close at 9 o'clock, we're not talking about that. We're talking if you decide now, your license says to 12 o'clock, you're supposed to be open to, and you're closing every night at 9, you need to come in and change your hours. All right, because there was the local board issued those hours because in the license on public need that there was going to be a restaurant open till midnight or etc. So any of those hours, work with your local boards, come in and change them, you can file it and so forth, but don't have to do it on emergency conditions. If there's a snowstorm or whatever's coming through, you decide to close that early, that's not what we're talking about. And we're also talking about people who get a restaurant license and decide to turn themselves into a nightclub and only open on Friday and Saturdays, or Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's not what your license is about. And if you're a function hall, that's different. When a function hall, the local board knows they're not gonna operate every day, it's gonna be demand from the public, or for weddings and everything, they approve that at the beginning. Does everybody understand that when you get your original license? So it's key on your hours, you're operating where you need to. The last two things in red have been changes to the law. All right, everybody saw during the pandemic is that we had to move outside, right? Because of the restrictions on inside. So we found that it worked and the legislators had created a streamlined process. If you are an existing licensee and you want to move to outdoor seating, okay, you do not have to go through the three-step approval process. You can do it all approval through the local board. You're already vetted. They have guidelines they follow that's been issued by the ABC Commission. You work with the local board directly, follow all their guidelines, and you can ask for outdoor seating. But your outdoor seating, remember, has got to be contiguous to your premises. You cannot say, okay, there's a space across the street, I'm gonna open across the street and extend my premises. You can't cross public ways or a street. But you can get permission from the municipality if you're gonna use their sidewalk, an area contiguous to the road, all of that, you work with the city of Tower. Any questions? And then the last one you talked about as, one of the other changes to the law, we want to make sure everybody says the ABC enforcement authority over the amendment of the license. So what this basically means is if you are changing anything with your license, remember, call the local board first and make sure you follow the exact procedures. Everybody understand that? Just, I don't care what it is, or pick up the phone, call the ABC. Our lines are open all day. All right, we have a website, we have a great website that shows you frequently asked questions. We have them in 12 languages. That anything you could think of in any of the areas, from a package store to a restaurant, to a hotel, to a club, anything like that, all the information is there. Does everybody understand that? Attorney Bellin, anything else?
And just because of the law change, we also want to point out to you, let's say you have outdoor service, just because that is allowed now just through local approval. The ABCC retains jurisdiction still over that amendment to the license. Any violations or any enforcement, the ABCC still has authority, even though the local board is the approving authority for expansion of outdoor service. Just want to make sure you know that too.
Great. Any questions? All right, next slide. All right, at this point in time, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna take you through a quick 2 minutes navigation of the ABC website, where you can find all this information. It's so easy, because I know you're all business owners in there or your managers. You're not during the day while you're working on the website trying to find information. It's usually after hours when we close. So basically what we do is we made the website very user-friendly and we streamlined it. You'll be able to, when you get to the front page, we'll show you exactly where they're just downloading it right now for everyone. And at that point, we'll be able to bring you through it, but it's a great tool to use and so forth. So just bear with us while we download it.
Anybody have any good alcohol stories to tell? That's covered. Yeah. Right.
All right, so here's the ABC website. How do you get to it? It's mass.gov/ABCC. When you get to the homepage, it gives you all our address, every information you need. All right, everything is there. When you get to here, this is the most important thing. This is what everybody in this room is dealing with. We have two types of licenses. We have a state license, which really no one in here, other than a farmer brewer or a farmer winery will deal with. Everybody will deal with the retail license. So you will go here, click on retail license. All right, as you page down, it gives you right in to apply. That's somebody applying new for it or transferring the license. Here's where everybody will click on, amend the license. All right, and then we give you all the amendments you can make. It's step by step. All you have to do is when you click on one, we'll just go to say change of manager. When you click on the change of manager, what's unique about each one, you get the application. And then we give you a full checklist of everything you need to make that successful. It is not the Framingham board to tell you, oh, you're missing this, you're missing that. You go through that and everything you need here. Automatic payment online, you can either pay by check or credit card. All right, and then everything else that is involved with the application and everything you would need. If you pass in an application and you do not pass in your passport, that's on you. The local board can act upon that application and disapprove it or table it until you get it. You don't want that. Go through the checklist, everything you need will be there. And we're gonna talk about some changes later on to the law that Kyle's gonna cover with citizenship. Non-citizenship can have a possession of a license now. We'll talk about that in a minute, but this is every single application has this. So shame on you if you come in an application, you're missing anything. It's not the board's responsibility to tell you what you're missing. Any questions? All right, Kyle, we go back. All right, so if we click back to the home page. All right, so you're back onto the home page, right? If you page down a little further. All right, you see more actions and more services. You'll see over here ABC Publications. If you click onto that, this is all of the advisories the commission has put out. Every single change in the law that you have seen over the last 15, 20 years, you can find everything here broken down by date, everything. You see the holiday calendars out here. This year, Kyle, you click onto that. This gives you every holiday that depending on what type of license you have, you can operate on. All right, look at it right there. If you have any questions, you don't understand it, reach out to the local board, the ABC. So this is an important tool for you, so you know exactly who can operate on Thanksgiving, who can't operate on Christmas items to that extent. If you go down, just page down a little further, everything else you could see, all the different changes as a cover that's involved in the law. This is all great tools for you to help you out as you begin to move forward on your business. Any questions? All right, jump back to the home page again. And you see over here, more resources you can see. You can see the ABC Investigation Division if you want to file a complaint. All right, I will give you an example. 50% of our complaints that we receive is from competitors. All right, and I'll give it to it, and I'm gonna tell you, out of those competitors' complaints, I would say 70–80% are exactly right. All right, they are doing it because we're even the playing field right now. So people use the social media, when you put something in writing on social media that doesn't conform to the law, you nail yourself right there. All right, so before you go and decide to do an event or to do anything, give us a call or give the Framingham Board a call to see if that event is not prohibited in the law. All right, because once you put it down in writing, then you're gonna end up having a headache. We don't want it. Call first to check on any of these events you're running, any deals you're running. We get it all the time when people are doing a meal deal or they say, okay, come in and you can get a bucket of beer that's normally just say $25. If you buy the bucket of beer, you can get it for $20. That's a violation. You cannot reduce the sale of alcohol on bundling packages. But if you decide to do a promotion, and you run that deal from on a 7-day calendar week, then it's acceptable to do from opening to close. So you can see everything else. You have the complaint form here, everything else you can see. If you by chance got a violation, you can actually look up the type of violation you have and you can see which way the commission has ruled on them. All of these information is there. Any questions on that? And then if you continue to move down here, there is other items you can do if you want to file a public records request. Anything like all of that is inside of here. The e-licensing, pay online, everything is there. A special license permit. People always call about a 1-day license. All that information is there. So everything is here for you to find. Then we also have our frequently asked questions, which is a valuable asset. This is free advice that you pay to an attorney for to get. What the attorney does when you call me, it goes to our website and finds the answer from you and ends up charging you. All right, and I'm not shying out. I know there's a lot of attorneys in the room, but it's an example how you can save yourself money. Every language you can think of, the major languages are there. Every question you can click on. So it covers all of the business. And these are the most popular questions we gathered for years that we were getting. All the information is there. Any questions on the navigation of the website? Yes.
We consolidate multiple changes into one license amendment. For example,
Yeah.
manager and name.
Absolutely. If you go to the amendment application, we have a multiple amendment application that you will see if you click on to right here. Multiple amendments. You can do for one price, all the amendments you want. The minute you split them into applications, you have to pay a $200 fee per application. But that's a good question. Doing a change of manager, change of office and director, issue stock. If you did that separately, it costs you $600. You can do it all for $200. All the information is there. There's an application and then there's a checklist given to you for each item. Good question on that. Any other questions? All right, we're gonna close up the website and give us a second. We're gonna jump right back to the presentation. No questions on that? All right, thank you. Just bear with us 1 second while we plug that into the Freddy system. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, this is where we're gonna eliminate all the fallacies that are out there. Okay, so everybody understands, one of the most important things is the purchasing of alcohol. All right, everybody in this room is a retail licensee. All right, you will only authorize to buy from an authorized source. What does an authorized source mean? A Massachusetts wholesaler or a Massachusetts manufacturer. Everybody understand that? Those are the only entities that you can buy their authorized sources from. And when I talk about wholesalers, you all know them, Horizon, Marnetti's, Ruby Wine, all of them out there, Anheuser-Busch, all of them out there, Craft Brewers Guild, those are all wholesalers. You have manufacturers like Wachusett and a bunch of other ones, along with all the farmer wineries, breweries, distilleries. They are all manufacturers. You have the authorization to buy from them, and you can buy as much as you want from them. It doesn't make no difference. The New Hampshire package store up there in Londonderry, New Hampshire, is not a Massachusetts package store. It's not a Massachusetts wholesaler. Everybody understand that? You only can buy from wholesalers in Massachusetts. We constantly see this across the board. All right, so it's important on that you do. Also, BJ's, Costco's, and Sam's Clubs, and Total Wine and More are not wholesalers. They are just big package stores. So if you're buying from them, that's a violation. And we don't want you to see that. So it's important of all, if you ever want to know what a wholesale list is, you need a list of wholesalers or manufacturers, you can give us a call in the office, you can go right online and apply for it. We'll get you an active list on that. Does everybody understand that? That's the most important. That's an authorized source. Why is that done? Number one is under state law is we're a 3-tier state. That means out-of-state wholesalers sell to in-state wholesalers. In-state wholesalers sell to retailers. Then you as retailers sell to consumers. No one can cross over the tier. No out-of-state manufacturer except for a winery can sell directly to consumers. So it protects your business, number one. Number two, it tells us where all of the product is coming. We know what wholesalers are authorized to carry a product. So God forbid there is a problem with a product. We know exactly what wholesaler that went to, and we know the customers. It protects the entity and the safety of the product. So it's really important. And also, it levels the playing field. If we have 90% of the people doing the right thing buying from authorized sources, then we have 10% buying from New Hampshire, Rhode Island, New York. All right, then that does not level the playing field. First of all, the state loses out on the excise tax, and it's not a fair playing ground for the people who are doing it right. The commission takes it very seriously when you buy from out of state unauthorized dealers. And the last thing is safety product. Anybody knows what pirated alcohol is? All right, somebody pulls up at your location, opens up his trunk, says, I got 5 cases of Johnny Walker Black here. Give me $300, you can have all 5 cases. Now, everybody knows those cases run $800 to $1,000 each. You don't even know if it's Johnny Walker in that bottle. All right, and we have had during the pandemic, and it remembers down the Caribbean, some pirate alcohol got out there, and it actually was dangerous, and 8 people died from it. All right, so never mind you buying from an unauthorized source. All right, that product. You're gonna have problems with the feds, the Attorney General's office, and the ABC. All right, so I want you to understand how severe and urgent that is. If somebody goes up with that product, you're best not to buy it. I don't care what type of deal you get, because you cannot be confirmed it's that product in the bottle. Does anybody have any questions? Also, the last thing, people own multiple licenses. You own 2 restaurants in town, you own 2 package stores and one in Natick. You cannot transfer alcohol back and forth. That is a fallacy. Every license is site specific. So when you order from a wholesaler, you're ordering from 1 Main Street. That product's a little bit of 1 Main Street. You order from for your other location at 10 Broadway, that alcohol must stay at both places. Because if you transfer alcohol from 1 Main Street to 10 Broadway, you're committing a double violation. The person transferring the license, is acting as an illegal wholesaler. You're gonna be charged in that. And the person receiving the product, all right, is gonna be charged with buying from an unauthorized source. So you cannot transfer between locations, even if it's the exact same entities. Everybody understand that? And the second reason why that's a problem, if the Department of Revenue comes in to audit you, they audit you by a formula. And what they do is they'll come in through one Broadway location. If you're using that to buy all your liquor and do distribution from your other places, they come in and how they audit you, they ask you for your records and then they subpoena the records of the wholesalers. All right, and they're gonna say, okay, you bought this much product, they do a formula. And the formula says you should have made this amount of money. If you've been distributed to your other locations, try to explain that to the DOR. They're gonna think that you're not doing proper accounting, you're gonna end with a forensic audit. And try to prove that you were transferring it to other locations, because they're gonna go to that other location, they're gonna ask the wholesaler, can you give us the invoices for this location? There's not gonna be any, because it all went to the other one. So save yourself the headache, you cannot do that, that's a double violation. And then the last thing I wanna give you too is complaints, this is one of our biggest complaints that people get, is that people are buying from unauthorized sources, and I'll give you the best complaint, we got one from a competitor saying, if you come to this location at 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, there is a white van unloading a ton of alcohol. So we get the complaint, which we follow up on, we stake out 4 o'clock, white van pulls up on a Thursday, gentleman unloads like 50 cases of product between beer and spirits. We go into the store after they unloaded, we ask them to see the invoice, they give us the invoices to New Hampshire package store. So guess what happens? All that product is confiscated. You're not getting credit from New Hampshire package, so you had to pay cash for that. So the cash you put out, you're in jeopardy of, all the products in jeopardy. Then it comes in front of the commission. Try to explain to the commission how you have a New Hampshire invoice in New Hampshire alcohol in Massachusetts. You're not gonna win that case. What happens is you lose all that alcohol, we take it and it's destroyed. We don't sell it or anything, it gets destroyed. So you're out on both ends. You're out the product and the money. Does everybody understand that? That's how severe it is. You are not getting the product back. So I don't think it's a slap on the wrist when you pay a fine and you get the product back. You don't. The product by law is all destroyed. So we don't want to see anybody run into a problem on that. Any questions on that? Remember, Costco, BJ's, people are constantly buying that. They are not wholesalers. Any questions? Yes.
The multiple licenses, does the ABCC expect the cap to increase from 9 ever?
Oh, for package stores? Well, I'm hearing different things. That there's some proposal for plans that maybe go up to 12, a gradual build up, 3 years to 12, but there's nothing been filed on it. I don't know, yesterday was the last day to file, so something might have got filed, but that's could be a 2-year approval by the time it makes it through it's gotta go to the House, House committee, then the House votes on it, then the Senate committee, so as you know, all of the governor's office. Could there be another opportunity to expand? There could be. All right, who knows on that, but there's many opportunities out there on that. Does anybody have any questions? Last thing is online. Can you take orders online? Yes, you can, as long as you have a brick and mortar location. You're supposed to be taking orders from that location, does I understand that? And of course, you can conduct your regular business as long as you, the server and everything is on that premises, that makes it legal for you to operate online and to ship that way. Any questions? Next slide. Okay, we talked about this, combine this together, you cannot transfer from both things, I explained online, we can go to the next slide. All right, delivery of alcohol, delivery in Massachusetts has always been legal. All right, a package store always had the right to deliver alcohol directly to consumers in Massachusetts. What we saw during the pandemic, it boomed, it went from a very low percentage to like an increased 300% overnight with the pandemic. And as you know, Amazon, Wayfair, all these now are delivering, it's a way of life. So as a package store, as long as you got a transportation license, which is chapter 138, section 22, under the ABC, which is $150 license, good for a calendar year, you can get in that, you can get a transportation permit, and you can deliver anywhere in the Commonwealth. It's just not in Framingham or the surrounding areas. That transportation gives you the ability to deliver to Boston if you want. You can go out to Worcester if you want. That gives you all the ability, but you must have a transportation permit. And why? That protects you. Once you have a transportation permit, it can be a company vehicle, it can be an employee vehicle, because the permit relates to the license plate. All right, so you can use your own, use an employee's vehicle, you can use a fleet, whatever you want on that. All the delivery is basically, this way is when you're making a delivery, you wanna make sure the invoice is with the product, and that your permit's always in the car. All right, because if the local police pull up and they see you delivering and they ask you the permit and there's no permit in that vehicle, all right, they have the right to confiscate that product. So you wanna make sure you have that. Now, as we expanded on, there was a change in the law. All right, as in the past, if you owned a restaurant on premise consumption, you could never do delivery. All right, all alcohol had to be consumed on premises. They had changed the law, I think it was last April, and basically what it gives the ability to anybody that has a section 12, all right, or a section 19 farm service permit, and you're serving food, as long as you're selling wine or malt beverages with a meal, you have the right to deliver. In that licensee get a transportation license, yes, you can, not a problem at all. You can apply just like a package store does. You can use any type of the vehicles, you can move forward. So as long as you're using, it used to be beer, wine, and spirits. That's what it used to be. Then they changed the law and they consolidated it down. Now you only can serve spirits that have mixes in them. Everybody understand? So we went from everything you could deliver to only mixes now. Beer, wine, and ready-to-drink cocktails. I think it's high noon. Those are prohibited from being delivered. Everybody understand that? It's only mixed drinks, and it's really to assist with these ethnic-style restaurants, like Asian restaurants or Mai Tais, Latino restaurants with daiquiris, or anybody that wants to serve a mixed spirit drink with a mixer, you have the ability to do that. You have to get a transportation permit and you can go on your way with that. You do run the exact same rules as everyone else. And then the key about that, when you have a delivery permit based on the licensee itself, you have the same rules you must follow that you do on the brick and mortar. Is what? Does anybody know? Yeah, check IDs. You are responsible just like you are on the brick and mortar serving as you are when you're delivering to that home, to the consumer. Everybody understand that? And kids are smart. They figure out what package stores do not card. And you can see numerous amounts. We had a parent call into us and said, my daughter was in the hospital last night with alcohol poisoning. Every Friday and Saturday night, she's going to this house and they're ordering alcohol from this package store. And all the kids are 18, 19 years old. All right, and in that party, there was some people who were younger than 17. All right, and what we figured out was we worked with the local police department, and this was in the city of Winthrop. We did a compliance check and we staked out the house. The delivery driver knew these kids were underage. They would tip them $20 a delivery. All right, so what ended up happening is that we did a sting. The police ended up arresting the individual driver for supplying alcohol to someone under the age of 21. We charged the licensee. All right. Because it's the licensee's responsibility for what that driver does. And to let you know, and Kyle's gonna talk later on about compliance checks. We're doing, as we do compliance checks on brick and mortar, we're doing compliance checks on deliveries. So everybody understand. And then the third part of deliveries is you can use a third party carrier to deliver, as long as they're licensed. Everybody knows Uber, DoorDash, GoPuff, as long as they come to you and they have an active license, and all the license you're gonna look for, it will be chapter 138, section 22, express transportation license, and all you gotta look and they'll tell you the year. All right, 2025. If they show you one from 2024, they may not be licensed. It's your responsibility to make sure they're licensed. Everybody understand that? Because you're giving authority to somebody to deliver your alcohol. So you wanna make sure they have a license. Second of all, they cannot take a percentage of the sale. Everybody understand that? For some reason, we have these companies running around saying, oh, I talked to the ABC. They said I could take 33% of the liquor sale. That is not true. It has to be a flat rate. All right, because if you give them a percentage of liquor sales, you're supposed to put them on your license. And question number 6 is having a beneficial interest. And you're not really going to give Uber and DoorDash a piece of your action, all right, of ownership. So everybody understand it's a flat rate. And if any one of them say that they talk to us, just pick up the phone and give me a call. Let us know what that company is, and my investigation enforcement division will go pay them a visit. So you want to make sure on that. And then the third thing you want to make sure you're giving authority to these delivery companies, make sure they have policies and procedures in place that you can audit to make sure they're checking IDs. All right, even though you're giving them authority, they have the authority and they will be charged with delivering to minors, If something is happening, that alcohol ends up in a minor's hand and that minor ends up hurting someone or themselves, any good attorney is gonna take it back to the original source. They are gonna sue everybody along the line back to you, because you gave them authority and you may be liable on that. Everybody understand on that? So it's important, make sure you can audit them. Now, people, they have scanners, they scan, you be able to look at it, you can look at logs. Like, I'll give you an example, like, we do a lot of work with UPS. All right, UPS has a signature, they also scan that person's card to make sure they're 21 years of age. And you also have the exact authority. When your own delivery company is delivering, or your own employee is delivering in yourself, along with a third party, you have the right to refuse that delivery if you think that person is under the age of 21. All right, or is intoxicated. I mean, it's saying, just like when they come to your restaurant or they come to your package store. You have the exact right, and you are defended by the commission, as long as you don't do it in a discriminatory way. Everybody understand that? That's one of the big advantages you have of everybody in this room. If you feel that that license could be fake, or you feel that person is not who they say they are, you have the right not to serve them. Anyone have any questions on that? Yes,
Does the delivery driver have to be tips certified?
not required in the state. It may be required by their company, but it's not required under state law.
That's all the things you're asking me to do, amount tip certification, not delivering to an intoxicated or underage person. So, okay, all right.
Any questions? All right, next slide. All right, I'm gonna turn this part over to Kyle Gill. Kyle Gill is the general counsel of the ABCC. Kyle?
Thank you, Ralph. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Gill, as Ralph just mentioned, I'm general counsel at the ABCC. First topic is compliance checks. The ABCC will be conducting compliance checks throughout 2025. This is how you pass an ABCC compliance check. Your employee or yourself, you ask the underage operative for identification. When that happens, our underage operative will turn around and walk out of the establishment. That's how you pass. As Ralph mentioned, we're also doing compliance checks, not just at brick and mortar locations, restaurants and package stores. We're also doing delivery. So if you do have delivery drivers, whether they're third party or issued by or given permission by your employees to make those deliveries, we are doing similar tests, compliance checks, where you have to make sure your drivers are IDing. And if you are using a third party company, like Ralph said, making sure they have policies and procedures, maybe even testing them yourself to make sure they are IDing your customers, I think is in your best interest. Does anyone have any questions on compliance checks? I know the municipalities will often do them as well, and I'm sure Framingham consistently does them too. Any questions?
Could I jump in on that?
Sure.
So, yeah, so we do them multiple ways. Typically, we try to do it annually. I will get, typically kids in college break. We'll go around 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. We'll go around to all the stores. Package stores, we'll go to the restaurants, bars, clubs, everything. The operative goes in. They'll get, a 6-pack of beer at the package store, bring it up to the counter. You ask for ID, they leave and you pass. That's it, very simple. Alternatively, if you have a section 12 license, they sit at the bar, they order a beer. If you ask them for ID, they leave. If you serve them, then you'll see me come in and talk to you. So this year, unfortunately, we did this recently. We had 14 people who didn't pass in the city. So next year, let's not have 14 people pass. Just don't pass, okay? Because it causes a lot of issues. So we don't want underage people, having access to alcohol. Also, I get complaints periodically. Members of the community, other establishments, anonymous complaints. Oh, we think this package store might be, selling to underage kids. All of officers sit in the parking lot and card kids on the way out. All of officers go in just plain clothes into section 12 licenses and just observe who's in there and ask people for ID. Anyone in the establishment, they have to provide ID, or at least their name and address, date of birth type of thing. That's a state law to an officer. So let's do better next year. Any questions on that? Yes. Yes.
I'm trying to lost their view of the church parking lot next to our building.
You'd like to go see the owner, anybody who's here at our feet? It's a, who are you order question? Sorry. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Jeff. Can you move to the next slide? Thank you. So it's not always as simple as compliance checks. But when IZ is presented to your establishment, there are currently six types of identification in which a licensee can reasonably rely on. That they're listed right here: Massachusetts driver's license, Massachusetts liquor ID card, Massachusetts ID card, passport issued by the United States or a government officially recognized by the United States, passport card from the United States, and then military identification card. There was actually just a change of law, January 8th, 2025, just less than a week ago, or roughly a week ago. And that is beginning April 8th, 2025. There are two new identifications in which licensees can now reasonably rely on the state. And that is a valid driver's license issued by another state or a global entry card issued by the United States Customs and Border Protection. So for always, and since I've been in the job out of state, I've always said identifications to take at your own risk. Now beginning April 8th, 2025, they are added to the list of identifications which someone can reasonably rely on. So that is a change to the law. As I mentioned, it goes into effect April 8th, 2025. It doesn't go into effect until 90 days after the governor signed it. That was January 8th. What I pointed out about these identifications is they have to be reasonably relied on. So if someone gives you an identification, a Massachusetts driver's license that looks nothing like the person before you, I would suggest that's not reasonable reliance. If they present to you an identification that's up at 25 and they look like they're 16 years old, I suggest to you that it's not reasonable reliance. So again, the reliance must be reasonable. When does it come into play, you might ask? This is an example I believe it would. So say it's now April 10th, 2025, and out-of-state identifications are added to this list. If someone came in with a validly issued New Hampshire state driver's license that happened to be their older sibling, they look alike, they're siblings, you look at the ID, you look at the person before you, and you believe it's that person. You make a sale of alcohol to that person. And Lieutenant McCoffey has someone outside in the parking lot, or one of our investigators, and they see someone who they think is youthful leaving in possession of alcoholic beverage. They check their age, and maybe they don't give them their fake identification right away. Maybe they do, but nonetheless, they find out that this person is under the age of 21. You now would have a defense, which is different from today because the out-of-state license is out there, but you now have a defense that I accepted a valid New Hampshire state driver's license and I reasonably relied on it. The person before me looked like the person on the ID. Under those facts, I do believe you would not be found in violation or should not be found in violation, given those facts. As it is right now, though, out-of-state IDs you do accept them at your own risk until the law goes into effect April 8th, 2025. This does not play into when someone's in possession of alcohol. So when our investigators go in, they don't always see the sale or delivery, but another issue that can happen, especially on premises establishments, is that someone of age purchases an alcoholic beverage and then passes the alcoholic beverage off to someone who's underage. You are responsible to keep sufficiently close supervision of your premises. So if that does occur and people are now in possession of alcohol, you do not have that same defense that, oh, the person that went to the bar gave me a valid Massachusetts license. They've now passed it on to someone else, and you are responsible for someone being in possession of alcohol on your premises. So I just wanted to just distinguish between those types of violations. One's possession of alcohol by someone underage and permitting that, and then one is a sale or delivery of alcohol to someone underage. It's the sale or delivery in which you have the defense right there. Does anyone have any questions on this topic? Yes.
Does any state approved scanners that work on licenses and passports?
We don't have any state approved, we can't recommend it. The one thing I would suggest is that the ID scanners, they're not all created equal. The ones that connect online and update regularly to attempt to be able to verify the security features that are added through by various states over the year or a new license issue. The ones that update to know to look for those security features, those end up seeing that. Also, ones that give percentages where it's 100% that this identification is genuine, or usually when it's less than 100, doesn't have to be concerned. We found that typically when if they do give the percentages and it's less than 100, a lot of times it ends up being a fraudulent application. I don't have it with me, unfortunately. There is a great resource that our investigators use. It's called the ID checking guide. If you Google just ID checking guide, it would be the first one that comes up. It's issued every year, and what it does is it lists so every state in the Commonwealth, I mean, in the United States, what the most up-to-date security features are on an ID. So whether it's micro print or an indent here, or you shine a white light in this area and you see something, it's very good. It's a very good tool to use for being able to determine if out-of-state identification is real or not. Another question here?
Yeah, we get a lot of pictures that are descriptions or.
So there's no case law specifically on pictures of ID. I would think as an attorney, I think it's tough sell to say I reasonably relied on a picture. But like all these situations, it's only a violation if at least with the state, if the person that ends up being under 21. If you decided to accept a picture and ID of someone who is 22 years old and they were in fact 22 years old, you're not violating a state law by selling to someone under 21 just because they're not. The risk comes when they're not 21 and now their defense is I accepted a picture.
Somebody showed you a picture on the phone, that's what it's about.
I would say no, I'd say that's a risk. I can't, there's no precedent I can point to you on it, but I don't think it would be reasonable in my opinion.
There's a lot of times people come over and people left my ID at home or something in my room and I have a picture I can show it to you, so it's a risk.
It's a risk, in my opinion. Yes,
Just a complete clarification on the passports. So this being a college city, student from Birmingham State who is obviously 21 uses a passport from France, we can accept that.
Yep, if it's validly issued, and I believe France would be an official government recognized by the United States, so yes, that would be one of the IDs in which you can reasonably rely. Any other questions on this topic? Can I move to the next slide, please? The last place of drink. Hopefully, no one's received this, but if you have, I'll just explain it. It's called a notice of last drink, and it's pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 90, Section 24J. And what happens is when someone is convicted or pleads guilty in the Commonwealth to operating under the influence, in the courts, they are asked by the clerk magistrate during sentencing, we didn't have the last drink. And if they name a licensed premises, that's recorded by the clerk of courts, then it's disseminated. I know we get a copy, I believe the local district attorney's office gets a copy, as well as the attorney general's office. And receiving one of these isn't a violation in and of itself. We've also found that they're not always the most reliable. We've seen circumstances where someone has said they were at Fenway Park at a Red Sox game, and just by pulling up the schedule, I think the Red Sox were in Canada that night. But they are used as a tool for us. So what our chief investigator does is he tracks them. So he receives them, and then if your establishment, maybe you got one and you didn't send an investigator, but now you have two, he notices you've had 3 in a year or 3 in a couple of years. That's when you can be certain that our chief will send one of the investigators, they'll go undercover. They'll probably even order a drink, they'll sit down and they'll observe, and what they're looking for is your patron showing visible signs of intoxication. So they're looking for, someone slurring their words, can't stand up straight, using the bar for balance, acting loud and obnoxious. That's what they're looking for. Once they make themselves known as intoxicated, the violation occurs once that drink is made thereafter. So before that point, they didn't show signs of intoxication. Unless it's an exorbitant amount of mixed drinks, that in and of itself wouldn't be amount to a violation. The violation occurs when they have now made themselves known that they are intoxicated, and then thereafter, your employee did make a sale or delivery to them, or yourself did. That's when the violation occurs, and that's when you have to, you get called in front of the commission, and you have a hearing on whether that was a violation or not. Does anyone have any questions on the last drink report? Move on to the next slide, please. This is the official hours of operation and last call procedures. Now, these vary tremendously throughout the Commonwealth and vary by municipality. Just in general, statewide, you're only allowed to utilize your alcohol license during your approved hours. You can't use it before, you can't use it after. But at this point, I'll turn over to Attorney Fallon to discuss Framingham.
And these are all requirements that are found in the city's rules and regulations, which you received a copy from when you first got your license, and you receive updates and copies when Audra renews your license for you, but we have also, obviously, your official opening and closing hours are as printed on your license, and if there is a question about that, just contact the city. But we also have rules about last call and when everything has to be cleared off and when everything has to be complete last sales occur. So in our rules and regulations, the last call has to be at least 15 minutes before your official closing hour. And in our rules and regulations, all of the bottles and alcohol serving vessels, I guess you could call it, all the containers have to be cleared off within 30 minutes after your closing. Employees can only serve who are over the age of 18, and employees can only clear off who are over the age of 18. That's a big point that is important for you to know. You have, as a licensee, the obligation to ensure that there's no sale before or after, as well as in compliance with these conditions. No sale after last call. Again, you just heard the statewide licensees, you cannot use your license before or after. Ours mirrors that. And it's your obligation in control of the premises, to make sure that the patrons leave by the time the patrons are supposed to be leaving. Orderly means no brawls in the parking lot, no brawls on the sidewalk, no fights, no someone's stuck in the gutter. It means that it's up to you. Hopefully that never happens, because that would be an over-service issue, but making sure everybody leaves in an orderly way, making sure everything is closed in an orderly way, making sure that you comply with the hours, making sure you comply with last call process, making sure you comply with last service process and clearing off process. And any questions, like I said, with regard to your hours, you can direct to us, but does anyone have questions about that piece of it? Sir,
A quick question. So the next wording of that, like, sort of the championship game, and it passes the 30-minute. Is there okay to still have not sales?
that would be not okay. That would be not in compliance with the requirements. Anybody else?
I just add to that. So the last call is 15 minutes is the minimum. Let's say you close at midnight. Want to have last call at 11:30, that's fine too. But it's a pretty short window between last call at 11:45, if your license is 12 o'clock. Everyone has to drink their beer and off-site at 12 o'clock. So some places, like to make it a little bit earlier. That way they give people a chance to finish their drink, and they can get people out of the restaurant on time. I can just say also other compliance checks that we do, officers go around, they know when the place is closed. They check and make sure that patrons are not in the business. Let's say if your restaurant closes at 1:15, if there's still people in there, it's gonna be a problem. So just keep that in mind. You don't need the last call to be at quarter or 15 minutes before. Whatever you think is good for you, you just can't have it less.
I just want to add one quick thing to that. That also applies within a reasonable time after your your establishment should be closed. That includes your employees can't be hanging around after that time. So once everything's cleaned up and closed and everything's all set, that, you know, if you have a 12 o'clock license, it wouldn't be expected that the police are driving by at 2 o'clock and you still have a group of employees in there hanging about. So that's important too, to make sure that's part of making sure you're orderly closing your establishment.
And one other point that Attorney Fallon said too is when 1 o'clock hits or your closing time hits, that includes your employees. They cannot stay after and have a beer because you're in violation of the law. So as they're saying, it's ample time, but alcohol shuts down. If it's 12 o'clock, no one can be in possession of alcohol. Yeah, everybody understand that? Because if the police department comes in, they don't know it's an employee or whatever, and there's no exemption for employees. So we don't want you to have a headache.
Thank you, Al.
Move on to the next slide, thank you. So this is slides about Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 138, Section 63A. It's referred to as the hindering an ABCC investigator or authorized agent of the local licensing authority. We see these violations. It's actually a criminal statute as well. We don't, our hearings at the ABCC are civil, but this can also be a criminal matter. But ultimately, there's 3 types of violations we've seen, that really are consistent with this type of charge that you can't do and are violations of the hindering statute, and that's being physically obstructive to an ABCC investigator. And these are violations the commission takes very seriously. Also, we see this very frequently enough. Them being locked out, ABCC investigators being locked out of somewhere on the premises or even into the premises. Also, cooperating in investigations and giving materials such as surveillance also is required under this law. So if you have ABCC investigators doing an investigation on your premises and you have surveillance of the night before and they request it, under this law, you are required to give it to them. There is a fallacy, I think, and I know a lot of you probably spend more time at your business than you do at your own home. But an ABCC investigator and authorized agents such as the local police, they do not need a warrant to come into your business, your licensed establishment, and perform an investigation. It's not treated like your home. By law, they can, and they certainly do not need a warrant. So I just want to make that clear. That is a fallacy that's out there. Does anyone have any questions? We can kind of give anything you want to add.
So some of the issues I've seen with that over the last few years, the staff isn't aware of that. The manager probably knows, but maybe they have someone checking IDs, security at the door, and they don't let us in. Then it's a problem. Also, that's 24/7. So you know, we get our power from the city ordinance, which says that, you know, the board is in charge. They can inspect it, police, fire, anything like that. We can come in 24/7. So if the lights are on at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, if you have a painting crew in your barn doing painting, that's fine. But we can go in there and make sure that, you know, your employees aren't there, there's no one drinking after hours, that type of thing. Just keep that in mind and just educate your staff. And generally, we don't have a lot of issues, but that has been an issue in the past. Also, in terms of getting, you know, security footage and stuff, you have to provide that under state law, also city ordinance. So, you know, cooperation goes a long way, so.
And remember, communication is the most important. If you're gonna have a painting crew in there, you can shoot an email to the licensing board. They'll communicate to the police department. There will be personnel in there doing either repairs or anything. Let them know in advance. So you don't have to worry about defending yourselves, because then the police department will be put on notice. The whole thing about communication.
Thank you.
There's a question about?
Yeah.
With surveillance review is just for an officer or somebody listed, not, like we can refuse if the patron is with them. Like just the officer or inspector can review the footage. We
Yeah,
don't
this doesn't have to do
allow
with
a
the
patron,
patrons.
like with an officer to see it. Right?
If the officer asks you for it, like, you have no obligation to show your records to a patron.
Right, if like if the patron comes with you, we can show you and not the patron, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
On that matter, when it comes to the video, after the fact with the patron, I would consult legal counsel on that. All right, on if the public is asking for it, so you just want to protect yourselves, that nothing happens to the video that you could be held liable for after. So I would say outside of the police department, consult your own attorney on what steps you have to do to protect the video.
Usually for how long we have to protect the video? Like say, if something happened, police investigate, we don't know, how long we have to save on the record.
So under state law, there is no specific surveillance requirement. I do think, a lot of municipalities do have such regulation that specifies how long it has to be saved. I'm not sure if Framingham does.
I'm not aware of any specific time period. I mean, I would just say if good business practice, if there's something where the police are interested or somebody else I'll hold on to it.
Okay, so if you guys ask me to say, but if you guys never ask, it's not obligation to say. You're fine.
Yeah, it varies by security system, like if your security system only, writes over itself in a week. That's perfectly legal.
I would just add, though, you're all covered by liability insurance. You need to check your policies on what they require. If you know something happened and there's a potential, and again, consult with your lawyer, consult with your own policy, but there's all kinds of legal doctrines that apply to evidence that could have been preserved, spoliation of evidence, that you just don't want to set yourself up for a problem. If you know something happened, it's something that you should probably maintain. If you know something happened and the police are coming in asking for surveillance footage and there's a gap in the footage, it's probably gonna be a presumption that something was destroyed, and that's not gonna be good, either in a civil sense or in a criminal sense either. So I'd be just conscious of that. Common sense should prevail in terms of preservation of that stuff.
And if you're a good operator, surveillance is your best weapon. It protects you. I'll give you an example. We had a gentleman walk into a license absolutely drunk. The licensee refused to serve them. They actually called the police, but he had left for the police car down there. He left and got in an accident and hurt a family. He said, I drank at that place. The last place they would have let him in because he was mad. They went back and looked at the video. They showed he didn't drink there. So that's what protected good operators. All right. But they did their due diligence. They called the police, but he had left before, but it protected him. So if you're a good operator, your video is your best protection.
Thank you, Ralph. Any questions on this topic before we move on? And move to the next slide. Licensees have a duty to protect their patrons and others from foreseeable harm. We have sent out an advisory, a couple in the last few years, and that's due to the increasing of non-consensual drugging, spiking of drinks that we've received, and it's been in the news. Obviously concerning on-premises establishments. We asked licensees to remain vigilant with this, and if they see anything, in addition to making sure someone doesn't poison themselves, to call the police right away. The licensee's duty to can be triggered when conduct of another patron puts the licensee or his employees on notice that harm is imminent. And one great thing that the precedents in case law actually give you here is your duty can be discharged by calling the police. So you see something, you call the police, there is precedent protecting you that now you have discharged that duty. It is the responsibility of each licensee to exercise close supervision of its premises to ensure compliance with the law. So as I mentioned previously, we ask you to remain vigilant and tell your employees about it. We are seeing an uptick in complaints and media coverage because of occurrences of non-consensual drugging at bars, clubs, restaurants, etc. Does anyone have any questions on this topic?
And this is the point that Attorney Fallon talked about, is crowds leaving, crowds hanging around. You're responsible. Inside, outside, in the area. So this is a big part of what it is. And this is where, if you feel the old days, you can't do anything if someone throws a sucker punch at somebody. There's nothing you can do because you didn't foresee that. But if you saw two people arguing and then you see them go outside, that's your responsibility to call the police. Because you know there's going to be a possibility of someone getting hurt or an employee getting hurt. So keep that in the back of your mind. What Attorney Fallon said about outside, you see issues brewing. It's better to call the police in advance, and if the situation is correct, you'll have no issues at all. But if both those people are intoxicated because they're drinking on your premises, you will have a headache. So I want everybody to understand, you're not discharged if you're over serving someone and they cause a problem. You're discharged when you foresee a problem coming and it has nothing to do with the consumption of the alcohol. Everybody understand that?
And also the local rules and regulations say that you must contact the police department for any issue within 24 hours. If it's something imminent, like a fight, medical, something like that, you need to call us. Some places don't like to call because they think we won't find out. We're the police, we find out about everything. It's all over social media. People call me with tips all the time, so it's better to get ahead of it and be cooperative and get us there.
Thank you, Lieutenant McCarthy. Any questions if we move on to the next slide? Thank you. This is the last slide I'm gonna go over. Just to be clear, it has always been illegal, and known to be illegal, that alcoholic beverages cannot contain, cannabis, THC, or CBD. That's always been the case. There was confusion, in the industry with regard to hemp-derived CBD or THC in non-alcoholic drinks. The Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources and the Massachusetts Department of Health issued a somewhat recent advisory within the past year, pretty much identifying that these products are not allowed under current mass law and regulation to be sold in the Commonwealth. So we did put out an advisory and informed everyone that they have to be taken off the shelves immediately. They can't be sold or manufactured in the Commonwealth. And this is referring to not just alcohol, but non-alcoholic products containing hemp-derived CBD or THC. Does anyone have any questions on that? Thank you. And now at this point, I believe I'll turn it back over to Ralph. Thank you for your time this morning.
To wrap up shortly with a few more slides of my presentation before I turn it over to Tom Walsh with the U.S. Department of Labor. Workman's comp. Now, I know the local board doesn't issue your license until you show an accident workman's comp policy, but what we're seeing out there in working with the Department of Industrial Accidents, people let their policies lapse. Okay, and the only reason we're telling you that to prevent you from having a headache. They know when your policy lapse at the DIA, the insurance company contacts them, they're required to. So if you have an active policy, when you renew your license in November, and then all of a sudden in February, you decide not to pay it, and it doesn't, and it goes insolvent. They're one of the few entities and departments outside of the fire chief, the police department, and the building department that can shut you down on the spot. The police can shut you down on the spot if they feel that life and property is in danger. All right, same thing with the fire department, the building department, destruction's not done, and the DIA, Department of Industrial Accidents. It is required that every business has workman's comp. All right, so if you let your policy lapse, when they come in, they will shut you down on the spot. If you appeal it, it's a $250 fine per day, and the earliest you appeal you're gonna get is 10 days, so it's gonna cost you $2,500. If you pay the fine and get workman's comp immediately, there's a different thing. So this is all information contacting. There are some businesses that are exempt. All you need to do is reach out to them. They'll tell you the exempt process and you can work with them on creating that. Does anybody have any questions? And if you are exempt, you bring that exempt letter into the Framingham board when you renew your license, so you can show them that you're exempt. You just can't say no one's gonna take it upon effect on that. Does everybody understand that? You gotta show the proof.
I think the next few slides are just stuff we can
Great.
go through.
Absolutely. Yep.
They're kind of things that we already talked about really quickly, the management ID card. All the assistants and managers and assistant managers are required to register with the police and have the ID card on their person or at the premises. And you can keep a photocopy of the ID cards on the premises for your manager and assistant manager.
And sorry, if I may, with regard to manager, there was a recent law change with regard to citizenships. For a long time, you had to be a US citizen to be a licensed manager in the Commonwealth. That is no longer a requirement. If you're a qualified alien under the US Immigration Act. Two acceptable forms of ID we're accepting and have seen so far are permanent resident card, also known as a green card, we're accepting, as well as employment authorization documents issued by the federal government. Those are the most common proof that we have seen submitted, and we are accepting those. Thank you.
Just really quickly too, these are just some of the issues, other issues that are here that we've talked, some of these we've talked about. And some of these we just briefly go over, obviously overcrowding, you have a certain occupancy permit for the number of, bodies that can be in the area based on what you are permitted. Overcrowding may be a problem, to need to be aware of. Over serving is obviously a no-no. Not, and it's up to you to make sure that your staff has the training necessary to understand and recognize when over serving could be an issue. If you're not licensed, I think we just heard about this with Mrs. Sackman. If you're not licensed for certain types of entertainment, but you're promoting it anyway, a lot of the times the board finds out about that on social media. Or complaints that get received. If failing to amend the license, and that includes if you're deciding to expand your service to another area, you had plans when you submitted your license where your bar was gonna be located, where your tables were gonna be located, changes like that, you have to let the board know. Lack of familiarity with the requirements of letting the officers in and making sure your staff and servers know that that's part of the law is if they're investigating, they have to be allowed in. Cover charges, those are not allowed to be charged in advance of gaining entrance. And if there is some type of an event and there's a charge for the event, it requires you to give a printed receipt. And you have to keep that under the law for 2 years. And you have to post a sign about that conspicuously about what are the rooms that it applies to. Again, entertainment licenses, sometimes we see an issue where there's a certain type of entertainment being allowed or promoted when the licensee doesn't actually have an entertainment license. And annual renewal, that's a big one. Everybody knows when you're supposed to get your application in, everybody knows when December comes around, you want to pick up your renewal. You want to make sure you've paid for it, have everything in place, have your insurance in place, getting everything to the coordinator so that it can be turned around. That's a lot of work, there's a lot of licenses, but you should be concerned with making sure that's done by the end of the year. That's a requirement, that's a legal requirement, and if you don't do that, you end up in January without it being renewed. You have to start all over again, you have to stop serving, can't serve alcohol, and you have to apply for a new alcohol license. So you don't want to jeopardize your license by not going through that renewal process.
And one thing to tag along with Attorney Fallon on is cover charges. Usually where there's cover charges, you also see all of a sudden promoters popping up. All right, you can use promoters to promote your business, but a lot of promoters are looking for a piece of the action. They say that night, I want 10% of all sales, that includes alcohol. You cannot give them percentage of alcohol sales. Everybody understand that? We talked about that earlier about you have to include them on the license, they cannot. If you want to pay them a flat fee to help with the promotion, that's okay. All right, same thing with entertainment. You can't give the band a piece of the bar. You can give them a piece of the food or whatever you're gonna do on, but you cannot do that. Everybody understand that? Because if you do, they create a violation. It's an unauthorized person involved in your license. So you just want to make sure on promoters and everything, you're doing the right thing. Yes.
So if we run fundraisers, are we allowed to donate a portion of alcohol sales for a fundraiser?
No, you can't, not, on that was the other thing.
We were curious about that.
Yeah, here's the issue you have right now, is that say somebody, there's a fire, someone loses their house. I know a lot of places jump up and do fundraising, but they'll give like 15% of the sales of the night. It's 15% of sales outside of alcohol. You cannot do alcohol. You can't raffle alcohol, you can't do anything like that. You gotta keep it separate. But whatever you wanna charge, or if there's a cover charge getting in, like as Attorney Fowler says, you stated it's going to the family, here it is, you do everything you need to do. You get percentage of the food sales, you cannot do alcohol. I know it's a sad point, because I know it's a good cause, people do it for people, with GoFundMe pages, they do all of that stuff, but you can't involve the alcohol.
And then just briefly again, all of your employees over 18 or over that are serving alcohol, they have to be tips trained. They're required to be, and you're required to keep the certificate so that if there is an investigation or a question on that, you have the certificates available. And that's part of Framingham's rules. And again, 18 or over, that's what the law requires.
And so just one thing to add on that, so the majority of places do the tips. There are other approved classes, if you look on our Framingham licensing page. There's other opportunities other than tips. Tips is convenient, it's online. A lot of places do that. Just ensure if your employee, you hire him today or her, within 30 days, they need that. My general recommendation, the first day they start there, have it. At least they have the tips, it's online. You can also have people come to your business, do in-person classes, or there's off-site classes where people can attend in person. But you need that, that's essential. Within 30 days, you need it. And every day they're working, when they don't have it, it's kind of a liability for you because they might not know the signs of intoxication, know how to check IDs, that's what they cover in that. And you want to keep those on site. Part of what I'm gonna do when I investigate any issue, and say, show me all the cards, show me all the training. And so just keep it on site out back. Doesn't need to be, at the bar or something. Keep it in the office.
The clubs too, just to really do a quick rundown on this, clubs are member only, that's the rules. Clubs are member only and you're allowed to bring a guest. If the member leaves, the guest has to leave. No service of anyone, even if they're a guest of a member who's under 21, that's the law. The clubs are required to file an annual report with the board as well as with the state. Clubs can only, same thing with hours, clubs can only operate during the hours that are approved. And clubs have to purchase their alcohol from wholesalers too. And these are just some references for you, just like with the website for the ABCC, the TIA has a pretty good online, easily accessible resources for you. So we added this in there that there's a wealth of resources and information online on the different state websites. And if there's any time that you might need to ask, where do I go for this? Just give us a call and we'll try to direct you to the right location for this information. Of course, we want you to work together. I think hopefully you hear that theme throughout here. If there's an issue, if there's a question, if there's a problem, it's better for you to call in advance than to see us on the receiving end of an enforcement action. So just pick up the phone. You're not going to get into trouble. You're not going to portend an issue with if you pick up the phone and just ask for help or ask for a question or ask in advance. We want to make sure that you work with the police department here. And use the police as a resource for yourself. And I think we're good. We're ready to go, Mr. Carroll.
Yep. I'm gonna introduce Tom Carroll. Tom Carroll is a liaison of the United States Department of Labor. They work with a wage, hour, and youth employment. It's a great resource for you. This is Tom has some great information. He's gonna cover about how to protect yourself. Make sure you're the right thing. Tom.
Thank you. Again, just give me like 10, 15 minutes. I know we're going to get the cheater week now. You've had so much information for it. I'm just gonna throw a few issues that we always find in the restaurant industry. I've been with probably as an investigator for 15 years. I would say the majority of my cases have been at restaurants. We call them initiatives where there's a lot of violations with the restaurants. There's construction, there's landscape and healthcare, those are the top four. But we believe restaurant is number one. Sometimes it's done inadvertently, but a lot of times there's some bad actors out there. I would say like 10% of the businesses, so hopefully not one of them. I just want to point out a few things to you guys. So US Department of Labor is a huge agency. There's OSHA, there's EPSA, there's EEOC, Employment and Equal Opportunity. But we're a wage and hour division. So our sole responsibility is enforcing the labor laws, the federal labor laws in the country. We also enforce government contracts. If there's a prevailing wage that has to be paid in fringe benefits, we do ad cases and anything that has to do with farming. We have to make sure they have proper housing. We do non-immigrants that come over for seasonal work. But today I'm just going to go over a few things on the Fair Labor Standards Act. Fair Labor Standards Act is what we mainly do. So there's 4 parts of the act: there's minimum wage, overtime, record keeping, and child labor. Before I explain that, I just want to point out that there's both state and federal laws with labor. So you have to comply with both. A lot of employers get confused because they have information from the state, so that's just so different from federal. So right now, the federal minimum wage is, everyone knows, it's $7.25. It's unrealistic, especially in our area. Hopefully it will change soon. And then the state minimum wage is 15. So if you're complying with both, you have to comply with whatever benefits the employee most. Like, so you have to pay the minimum wage of $15. When overtime goes into play, federal government takes those cases, because in Massachusetts, the hospitality industry is exempt from overtime, so restaurants don't have to pay overtime under state law, but under federal law they do. So anytime the state gets a complaint on a restaurant not paying overtime, or if we get the complaint, we do those cases because it's required under federal law. For minimum wage, in the restaurant industry, that's only one of the few examples we can receive less than minimum wage for typically employees. They had that on the ballot recently this past year. I'm glad that it passed because it really just makes sense and honestly, both the server and the restaurant. So that is kind of thrown out the window, but in Massachusetts, you have to pay $6.75 for a typical employee for minimum wage for all hours worked. They have to make an average of $15 an hour based on your tips. Usually that happens, you're not gonna see that unless it's a day where it snows, no one's at the restaurant, and no one has any customers. You do have to make up the difference to the $15 an hour. For a tipped employee, they consider the minimum wage employee. We understand that tipped employees make probably $30, $40 an hour on good nights, but they're still under law considered a minimum wage employee. So there's certain restrictions. You can't make any deductions from them. If someone walks out of the restaurant, doesn't pay their bill, you say, hey, you're paying their bill, you can't do that because they're considered a minimum wage employee. If they break something or drop a rack of glasses, you can't make that deduction. There's also uniforms, they're not supposed to be deducted for uniforms. Most restaurants will require, I'll just wear black pants and white shirt, but if they have a company shirt, they usually give it to do that. But if they do work minimum wage, that's where overtime as a server, that's where we do find violations. They'll say, oh, I'm gonna pay time and a half for $6.75. That's not correct because the minimum wage employee is $15 an hour. So if they're working overtime, they're getting their $6.75 from you, but they have to receive an additional halftime, which is $7.50, halftime of $15. So they have to receive $14.25 per hour for any hours worked over 40, plus their tips. We see that, that's probably the most common violation. Hours worked is a big thing as well. You have to make sure that you pay them for all hours worked. We'll go into a restaurant, ask for their records, and someone will work, from 4 p.m. to midnight, and they automatically get 30 minutes deducted for a break. And sometimes they don't have a break. At the sidewalk for service, taking 40 from the doors or whatever they're doing, but they have to be paid for all hours work because if they do work 4 or 5 days a week, we're not being paid 2 or 2.5 hours for their work. If you have multiple employees, and so a 2-year, going back 2 years, it hurts money out of your pocket. So just if someone takes a formal break, have them punch in and out. I know with everything electronic now, it does make it a lot easier. If it's 28 minutes or longer, you don't have to pay for it. It's 20 minutes. If it's less than 20 minutes, you have to pay them because if it's 10 minutes to go out and use the restroom or whatever, you have to pay them if it's less than 20 minutes. Salary versus overtime. That's a big issue on restaurants, usually in the kitchen. Usually we'll have cooks or line cooks that are paid a salary. They'll say, okay, I'm gonna give you $1,000 for the week. And the person works 50 hours for the work week, and they get their $1,000. We go in there and say, okay, well, this person's a salaried employee. Salaried employee, we determine if they're exempt from overtime or not. Not all salaried employees are exempt from overtime. Usually it's someone that's a manager or has independent decision making, which causes profit or loss for the company. Usually someone, it's common sense, it's usually someone higher up or as a supervisor. So you have not that many in the restaurant industry. You're gonna have managers, front of the house managers, you're gonna have back of the house manager, kitchen manager, or a chef or sous chefs. They're all can be exempt from overtime pay. And the minimum salary is very low, it's only $684. That has to be paid every week. If they don't work, they only work 1 or 2 days, 1 week, and you say, oh, you only work 2 days, you're not getting the full salary, then they're an hourly employee, and they're not salary. So just be careful on that. If some employees pay their workers cash, what Department of Labor, we have no enforcement of static wages. A lot of times we'll hear from employees that say, okay, well, I'm working under the table, I'm getting paid $12 an hour cash, because if I was on the books, I probably would have been $11. And then eventually, if there's bad blood between the employer and the employee, they come to us and say, I wasn't paid minimum wage for the past 2 or 3 years. We get the records, or if there's no records, we go on a statement, and we have to pay that additional wages, even though it's paid in cash. We do notify other agencies if that's the case, if egregiously, there's a bunch of people paid cash. They're not gonna have their, unemployment, they're not gonna have their industrial or workers comp, there's a whole thing out there, so we do give that information out. But we don't enforce anything to do with cash wages. Yeah, I'm going quickly because I know everyone's had a lot of information. But in federal law, it's only about hours worked and getting paid for those hours. State has more requirements. They have to have, you have to have 1 hour of sick time for every 30 hours work. If someone leaves, you have to pay them for their accumulated vacation time. We don't do that under federal law. That's not required. Sick time is when someone leaves under the state, that's not needed to be required to pay as well, but it isn't under federal law. Immigration status, that's a big thing. We don't have jurisdiction on someone's immigration status. We don't ask that person. We find that there's a lot of issues because if an employer knowingly pays an employee less than minimum wage and says, oh, you don't have status here, so, you help me out, I'll help you out, I'm gonna pay you $10 or $12 an hour cash because you don't have status to work. That is not allowed, obviously. The labor laws are for everyone. Their immigration status is not dependent on the labor laws. If the employee usually as well, if someone without status won't be paid overtime, they'll still get the same rate for the hours worked or employee. We find all that stuff out because eventually the employees notify us. Just to let you know, if you ever are subject to an investigation by the Department of Labor, in the restaurant industry, we usually go unannounced. We're not gonna say, hey, we're coming by next Thursday at 2 p.m. We want to get a true sense of your establishment. So we'll come in and we'll actually say we're from the Department of Labor, we want to take a kitchen, we want to see how many employees are here. So we'll notice there's like 4 cooks, there's 3 servants, it's dishwasher. So we'll make the amount of people that are working and then we'll say, can we see the schedule, who's working, and make sure all that matches out. Because we want to understand who's working, how many employees there are, et cetera. We're not out there to, shut you down. We're just trying to make sure that everyone's on the same playing field. We've heard that a lot today, but why should some employers comply with the labor laws and some don't? And then obviously, the prices won't be as high. I know it's a tough time for the restaurant industry, but you do have to comply with the minimum wage. And again, like I said, I'm happy that that $15 minimum wage to be applied to different employees. Just from my experience in doing investigations, it would have harmed both the employer and the employee. Temp agencies, just be careful. If you ever hire a temp agency for any of the employees in the restaurant industry, it's a big red flag. Usually temp agencies, the majority of them are very shady. They are created in order to get undocumented workers a job. So they'll say, okay, we'll get you 3 cooks, and we'll pay you. We'll charge you $20 an hour, but we're gonna pay the employee $15 an hour. We'll do all the paperwork for them, et cetera. Unemployment insurance, all that. And then something happens and then the temp agency is in fact probably only paying $10 an hour to work. We're threatening if we don't like it, all ice, we can do that. And it turns out to be, we do an investigation, we find out there was some undocumented workers being paid $10 an hour by the temp agency. Because the employer hired the temp agency, we're a joint employer of that worker because they're actually working at their establishment. All of a sudden, the temp agency disappears because it's based out of someone's house or one rental. And we go after the restaurant and say, hey, you have to pay all these minimum wage violations and your back wages. And they'll say, no, here's my records. I paid the temp agency $20 per hour for this worker, and when they worked overtime, I paid them $30. We'll say, well, did you ever ask an employee how much they received? And they say, well, no, that's not my job. And so, well, actually it is. You want to make sure that your employees are receiving their minimum wage overtime payment and they get paid for hours work. So the restaurant gets stuck in the bill after paying the inflated wages to the temp agency, and now they're hit with this huge amount of back wages. The one thing I did want to say about the back of the house kitchen is when someone's a salaried employee, common example is if they're getting $1,000 for their 50 hours of work, so they're getting $20 an hour for all the hours work. But they're not exempt overtime, so we take, how much did you receive for the whole week? Oh, I received $1,000. How many hours did you work? I worked 50 hours, so I got $20 an hour. Okay, well now you're entitled to $10 an hour for 10 hours over 40. So they're owed $100 for that week. Then we go back 2 years, talking 5,000 for 1 year, another year is 10,000. We do liquidated damages, so you're at $20,000 in back wages because you thought that you were paying this person properly.
It's such a question. We allowed to ask for sick time proof, for ask for sick time, can we ask for proof? Approve, like the reason they got sick.
I mean, I believe that's up to you, it's not required, but if you think someone's just making that up, then that's. If they were out 3 days, oh, let me show that you had a sickness or get a lot of letter from the doctor, you need something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's up to you, that's not required, that's, you're their employer, you can make the policies and decisions, if someone's out sick even for 1 day, and if your policy is. I want to see that you were actually sick because someone told me that you were playing softball, down the street. That's, something that would play, we can disciplinary action against them and say, hey, you work your shift, call it sick, but I know you weren't. But the example I was given on the back of the house employer, doing the cooking, so they would say, well, you know what, if I do minimum wage, which is $15, that's 40 hours, that's $600, and then they work 10 hours of overtime at $22.50, that's another $225, so. I'm in compliance because I'm paying them over the $825 that's required under minimum wage, and I'm paying them overtime. They're kind of backing into it because they're not paying them hourly. If you're paying them that $1,000 for the 50 hours work, it's a salary on your paycheck. If you want to say they work 49.2 hours or 50.5 hours. So just be careful. It's something minor that you can prevent by making sure that the workers are hourly, not salary. And it's like in cases like that, it's a misunderstanding. We kind of probably wouldn't do liquidated damages if it was someone that was did it by error. But if it's a problem with all the employees, we'd say, I'm sorry, you're gonna pay the liquidated damages. So that would be a as well. Dual jobs. If someone's a hostess and a server, their rates change. When you're a hostess, they're getting $18 an hour. When you're a server, they're getting $6.75. The easiest way to do that, you can do it by once the individual hits 40 hours, and if there's hosting after 40 hours, so I have to pay a time and a half to maintain. You don't have to, you can do it another way, which is a weighted difference, which means how much did they make for the whole week? How many hours did they work? So they got an average of 50 an hour. You can pay only a half time of that 15.50 instead of a half time of the $18. So a way to save money as well. Child labor, this is the last thing I'll go over, is a big thing, very important. Across the country, yes.
Before you get into that, I was just wondering, if there is, if you live in house, in the restaurant and university, you've got a server who you would be paid all of them for shift, but no, per hour, is that okay?
No, it has to average $6.75 an hour. If you want to overpay, you can, but if you're saying.
So that's not okay.
No,
That's not okay.
but as long as it's covering the hours, the minimum wage. So if you're paying them $40 for the shift, how many hours do they work? They got 75 an hour.
Yeah, sometimes they, well, I should make more than.
Yeah,
you know,
but you're paying them more than 6.75, that's fine.
Thank you.
The child labor, it's broken down between 14 and 15-year-olds, 14 and 15-year-olds. Sometimes you'll have them on buses, it's very strict on the amount of hours they work. If you want to work 18 hours a week in total. They can only work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They can't work during school hours, so it's kind of a small window between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Where they can actually work during the school day. On Saturdays and Sundays, they can work up to 8 hours, and for the whole week, they can't do more than 18 hours. The school is not in session, vacation, summer, they can work up to 40 hours. You have to use common sense, it can't be a hazardous occupation. I didn't bring it today, but this thing, if you just Google child labor bulletin, those 3 words, child labor bulletin, it gives you exactly what positions they can do and what positions they can't do. This is like the Bible for child labor. Definitely, if you have a question, look it up, or you can call and look at the answer for that. 16 and 17-year-olds, there's no restrictions on the amount of hours worked. Federally, on the state, they can only work up to 48 hours a week. But they can work up until midnight for restaurants, until midnight if it's, that's much closer to the facility doing well. But just keep that in mind, because if we go there and we have a child labor violation, which is usually it's like a meat slicer or they're using an industrial mixer, something common sense where they can really look into it, then there's gonna be a child labor violation. We're gonna give you a fine. Fines have gone up substantially to try to prevent that. But one thing I always throw out there is that if you have a violation of the child labor law, it's, you know, a violation, but the family is gonna come after you. They're gonna sue you and civilly, and they're gonna get a lot of money because their attorney's gonna say, you violated the United States child labor laws, and as a result of that, my child got injured. And, you know, we've seen that, and you can lose your business. So by us being hard on child labor, it kind of prevents you from losing your business on if something happens. If a child was injured while you're retaliation is a big thing. If you are retaliatory against an individual, for an individual comes up to you and say, hey, you're not paying me overtime. And he says, well, you don't have status here, so just if you don't like it, you, or even like that, right? And we have been coming forward with retaliation with our attorneys and, later we can deal with this if they, if we can show that we can tell you. We usually work with retaliation, for a question you get, where we have as well. The main thing is on this, I'm just gonna wrap it up because you guys have been here a long time. These are up front. We have an 866 number, it's like an 800 number, 866 for US wage. I know when you hear 800 numbers, you're like, oh, I'm not calling, I'm gonna have these phone trees, you're gonna press one, press this. When you call this number, it asks you to put in your zip code. You put in your zip code, and if it's a national number, it's forwarded to the Department of Labor office closest to you, so it'll be referred to Boston. We have investigators on Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, and they're on a weekly, they help you answer the phones. So between 8 and 4:30, Monday through Friday, you're going to get an investigator answering the phone. You can ask them any question, you don't have to give your name, anything like that. If it's something that we can't, it's not related to wage and hour, we'll tell you what agency to go through. If it's discrimination, we'll give you a contact to EEOC. If it's employer safety, we'll give you information for OSHA. There are instances, it's only one person on the phones, and if it's busy and you leave a message, they have to respond to you within 24 hours. It's required of our policy. So based on, I know like government, I myself, I call the IRS and it says someone don't get through. This number does actually work. And our website is here too. It's dol.gov/wage and hour division of WHD. Has everything in there. But the easiest thing, if you have a question and you're unsure, and you don't want to get in trouble for a violation, just call it. And they give you the answer. It's that one. I know I rushed through everything. But I think that's it, that I wanted to go over. Just some bullet point issues where we find the issues occur in the restaurant industry. Any questions from anyone? Thank you for your time. And if you want this, I will finish it. Thank you.
Well, listen, on behalf of the ABCC, we thank you all for attending today and great work by Lieutenant McCarthy, Kathy Fallon, the entire team, Audrey running the whole entire presentation today, and the entire team setting up and so forth. So I'd like to thank you all for the hospitality. And as we say, you just as the mayor said, we're just a phone call away. So you can call any one of us up here and we'll get you the information. Don't go forward and do it and then ask for forgiveness because you're not gonna get forgiveness. I'm telling you that right up front. It's better to ask, we're being honest, better to ask in advance, and we can put you in the right direction.
And just real quick on some administrative issues, so what to expect for a police investigation, let's say you have a section 12 foreign license, there's a fight there, officers respond, someone gets arrested, or there's a medical or whatever it is. Like we talked about earlier, you have to call us, so hopefully you call. The officer who's involved is probably gonna email me the report, or I'll see you in the shift report, or somebody will tell me. First thing I'm gonna do is talk to the officer, say, who called? What I'd like to hear is the establishment. If not, that's kind of a red flag. When the officer goes there, he's likely gonna find out who the bartender was, who served that person. How much they were served, get a receipt, and they'll tell you that Lieutenant McCarthy will be following up. Make sure you retain the, the security footage. And then I typically call the manager on record. And I typically follow up from there. Like Ralph talked about with the security footage, a lot of my investigations go no further than viewing some of the security footage or looking at the tab. If there's no over serving, a lot of times it's not an issue. Where you get jammed up is where you over serving. So if Ralph and I go into a bar, we don't like each other, we each have one drink, we're not intoxicated. and I decide I wanna punch him, and there's an issue, you call us, I get arrested. It's not gonna be on you, because there was no over serving, you call us. Alternatively, you know, you serve one of us, you know, 8 beers in an hour, and that's what caused the problem, then it's gonna be an issue. You know, but regardless, you still have to call. Any questions on that? All right, make sure you signed in when you came in. Please take some of the refreshments. Also, we have a member of the licensing commission here. I just wanted to point out, Joe, want to give us a wave? There he is.
It's on behalf of the city, thank you for attending, and if you do want a copy of this, we'll email it to you, just reach out to Audra. If that's all right, and then she can transmit it to you by email. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, I know, appreciate